June 15th, 1945. The train slowed with a shudder, iron wheels screeching against the rails, and the women inside leaned forward, their faces pale beneath grime. They had been told 1,000 things about what awaited them. Rumors whispered in barracks, propaganda shouted by officers desperate to keep morale afloat in a collapsing Reich. Some believed they would be lined up and shot, others that they would be thrown into mines as slave labor, and nearly all of them feared violation and starvation. Maria Hoffman pressed her face against the grimy window as Camp Liberty materialized through the Texas heat shimmer. At 26, she had served as a communications specialist, her sharp mind once devoted to coordinating Wehrmacht operations across the Eastern Front. Now her uniform hung loose on her diminished frame, her blonde hair matted beneath a threadbare cap. The other women crowded around adjacent windows, their whispered fears creating a symphony of dread. The train doors groaned open with mechanical finality. American guards waited in pressed uniforms, their rifles held more like ceremonial staffs than instruments of execution. The silence itself was unnerving. No snarling dogs, no shouted threats, just professional efficiency that made Maria's skin crawl with uncertainty. Then it came, drifting on the humid Texas breeze like a ghost from another world. The smell of freshly baked bread, warm and yeasty, impossibly rich. Maria froze mid-step, her nostrils flaring involuntarily. Bread was a word from memory, from mornings before rationing, from kitchens where mothers still had flour and children still played, without sirens overhead. Her stomach twisted in rebellion against its own emptiness. She remembered her last meal in Germany, watery turnip soup and sawdust bread that crumbled to dust between her teeth. She had eaten it quickly, knowing her younger sister, if she were still alive somewhere in the rubble of Hamburg, might not have even that. The aroma grew stronger as they formed into lines, each breath a contradiction of everything they had been taught about American brutality. One woman beside Maria began to weep silently, overwhelmed by the scent of abundance in the land of their captors. Another muttered prayers in broken whispers, unable to comprehend this sensory betrayal of expectations. Maria felt her knees buckle slightly, not from weakness, but from the psychological impact of smelling something so fundamentally nurturing in a place where she had expected only cruelty. The processing station defied every assumption Maria had carried across the Atlantic. Clean wooden barracks stretched in orderly rows, their windows gleaming in the afternoon sun. Water flowed freely from actual faucets, clear and cold, not the brackish liquid they had known in bombed-out German installations. American medical personnel, including women in crisp white uniforms, conducted examinations with professional detachment rather than the sadistic pleasure Maria had been conditioned to expect. Inside the barracks, she discovered straw mattresses lined neatly in rows, actual pillows, and blankets that smelled of soap rather than mildew. Buckets of water stood ready for washing. The floors were swept clean, the walls painted white. Compared to the basement shelters and burned-out buildings many had called home for months, it looked almost deliberate in its comfort. Greta Zimmerman, a field nurse from Berlin, whispered that it reminded her of boarding school. Though her tone carried bitterness, the words held a dangerous seed of recognition. This was not the concentration camp they had been promised, not the brutal labor facility their officers had described to maintain fighting spirit in a collapsing Reich. Maria found herself staring through a window at the mess hall, where smoke rose from actual chimneys. Through open doors, she glimpsed American soldiers in clean aprons arranging plates on long tables. Not tin cups or slop buckets, but actual ceramic plates. Her throat tightened at the impossibility of such abundance in enemy hands. The other women moved cautiously through their assigned quarters, touching surfaces with trembling fingers as if the cleanliness itself might be an illusion. Some searched for hidden cameras or listening devices, convinced this comfort was merely psychological warfare. Others sat on their bunks in stunned silence, unable to process the contradiction between expectation and reality. Anna Richter, a surgical assistant from Munich, had prepared for interrogation under bright lights, for starvation rations, for deliberate humiliation. Instead, she faced running water, electric lighting, and American guards who spoke in measured tones without obvious malice. The efficiency was professional rather than cruel, suggesting systems designed for human dignity rather than systematic degradation. As evening approached, the aroma of fresh bread grew stronger, accompanied now by other impossible scents. Meat cooking over open flames, vegetables that actually retained color, coffee that smelled like coffee rather than roasted acorns. Maria pressed her face against her pillow, overwhelmed by sensory memories of peacetime abundance she thought had been lost forever. The mess hall doors opened with ceremonial weight, revealing a sight that challenged reality itself. Steam tables lined the serving area, each section containing enough food to supply a Wehrmacht company for 3 days. Fresh bread, still warm from industrial ovens, sat stacked in wicker baskets beside butter, so yellow it seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. Green beans retained their vibrant color instead of the gray-green mush that characterized overcooked German vegetables stretched with water to increase volume. Maria approached the serving line with trembling hands, watching American kitchen staff ladle thick stew into her bowl. Real beef floated among carrots and potatoes, rich gravy coating everything in abundance that defied wartime economics. The bread alone represented agricultural surplus that Germany had not known since before the Great War. She found a seat beside Greta Zimmermann, both women staring at their plates in stunned silence. The portions exceeded weekly German civilian rations. The butter used to prepare vegetables represented monthly allocations for German households. The meat alone equaled what entire districts might receive through black market channels. Around them, other prisoners sat frozen, unable to reconcile their hunger with the shame of eating better as captives and their families did as free citizens. Some wept openly, overwhelmed by the contrast between this abundance and memories of children begging for scraps in Hamburg's rubble-strewn streets. Others pushed food aside, unable to accept sustenance from those they had been taught to hate. Maria raised a spoonful of stew to her lips, the rich flavors exploding across her palate like forbidden fruit. Salt, fat, herbs that had vanished from German cooking when spice imports ceased. She thought of her sister Anna, probably queuing for hours in Hamburg for thin soup and sawdust bread, if she was still alive at all. The psychological warfare was more devastating than any physical abuse. Each bite tasted of betrayal, both of the Reich that had promised victory while delivering starvation, and of the civilians still starving while she sat in enemy hands eating like nobility. The Americans had not humiliated them through cruelty, but through generosity, demonstrating abundance that made German wartime leadership appear incompetent rather than heroic. Anna Richter chewed slowly, reverently, as if afraid the food would vanish. Her medical training allowed her to calculate the caloric content with precision. This single meal contains more nutrition than we received in 3 days during the Ardennes offensive, she whispered to Maria. If America can feed prisoners this way while fighting a global war, what does that reveal about their true capacity? The third day brought routines that shattered Maria's understanding of captivity. A bell rang at dawn, not harsh and commanding, but melodic, almost gentle. American guards conducted roll call with professional courtesy, checking names against clipboards rather than shouting threats. Work assignments followed, but these were light duties: cleaning, food preparation, laundry, tasks designed more to maintain dignity than extract forced labor. In a makeshift classroom, Sergeant Patricia Coleman from Nebraska attempted to teach basic English phrases. Her voice was patient, encouraging, treating enemy prisoners like students rather than animals. Maria found herself repeating words that felt strange on her tongue: democracy, freedom, opportunity. The concepts themselves seemed alien after years of totalitarian conditioning. The medical dispensary operated with efficiency that impressed even Anna Richter, despite her professional skepticism. American nurses treated scurvy, malnutrition, and stress-related ailments without judgment or cruelty. They administered vitamins that had been unavailable in Germany for years, monitored weight gain, and documented recovery with scientific precision rather than sadistic pleasure. Recreational periods allowed prisoners to walk the compound's perimeter, to read books from an actual library, to write carefully censored letters home. Maria sat beneath a Texas oak, trying to compose words that would not reveal her shameful comfort to her sister Anna. How could she explain eating fresh fruit daily while Hamburg's children fought over apple cores and bomb craters? The psychological burden grew heavier with each passing hour of ordinary kindness. Every meal reinforced the same terrible message that American abundance made German sacrifice appear foolish rather than noble. The Reich had promised glory through suffering while their enemies offered sustenance without asking for gratitude or submission. Greta Zimmermann struggled with similar guilt as she helped in the camp infirmary. Working alongside American medical staff, she witnessed their casual competence, their access to supplies that German field hospitals could never obtain. Morphine, sulfa drugs, bandages made from actual cotton rather than paper substitutes. The enemy possessed resources that rendered German medical heroics primitive by comparison. Evening brought quiet conversations in the barracks as women processed experiences that contradicted every assumption about American weakness. Some clung desperately to Nazi ideology, insisting this treatment was temporary manipulation. Others began whispering dangerous questions about a system that could afford such generosity toward enemies while simultaneously fighting across multiple continents. The American women serving meals delivered perhaps the most devastating blow to Nazi ideology. These were not the weak, pampered creatures that German propaganda had depicted. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez from Arizona managed complex food service operations with expertise that exceeded what many Wehrmacht officers had achieved. She coordinated supply chains spanning continents, operated industrial kitchen equipment with technical precision, and demonstrated organizational skills that challenged every assumption about female capabilities. Maria watched in stunned silence as Corporal Dorothy Washington, an African-American kitchen supervisor from Detroit, directed white personnel with natural authority. She managed inventory systems, tracking thousands of individual items, maintained quality standards that treated prisoner meals as worthy of professional attention, and operated machinery more sophisticated than anything Maria had encountered in military communication centers. The casual competence was more unsettling than any deliberate cruelty could have been. These women worked alongside male personnel, without the segregation Nazi ideology demanded, supervised complex operations while maintaining military discipline, and treated German prisoners with professional courtesy rather than racial hostility. Everything the Reich had taught about American weakness and female inferiority crumbled under observation of daily reality. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez from New Mexico inspected barracks with efficiency that impressed even critical German observers. She maintained sanitation standards, coordinated supply distribution, and managed prisoner assignments with administrative skills that revealed American military competence extending far beyond combat operations. Her authority was unquestioned by male subordinates. Her orders followed without hesitation or resentment. In the camp infirmary, Captain Jennifer Thompson from Oregon demonstrated medical expertise while managing treatment protocols for hundreds of patients simultaneously. She diagnosed nutritional deficiencies, prescribed vitamin supplements, and monitored recovery progress with scientific precision. Her casual mention of medical school training revealed educational opportunities for women that Germany had never provided even in peacetime. The serving line conversations challenged fundamental assumptions about racial hierarchy. African-American staff worked efficiently alongside white personnel, their technical expertise with complex equipment matching or exceeding their colleagues. They maintained professional relationships that defied Nazi theories about racial incompatibility, suggesting American social organization operated on principles Germany had rejected as impossible. Greta Zimmerman, observing American nurses coordinate patient care, recognized professional standards that exceeded German military medicine even before wartime shortages. These women possessed advanced training, access to modern equipment, and pharmaceutical supplies that German field hospitals had never obtained. The second week brought menu variations that demonstrated American agricultural coordination beyond German comprehension. Tuesday featured grilled chicken with herbs that had traveled from California farms. Wednesday brought pork chops, glazed with sauces requiring sugar allocations, exceeding monthly German civilian rations. Thursday's fish dinner showcased seafood caught, processed, and transported from Gulf Coast waters to inland Texas within days of harvest. Each protein selection required supply chains coordinating production across thousands of miles without apparent strain. The chicken farms supplying Camp Liberty operated on scales that dwarfed German agricultural installations. Single American poultry operations produced more meat weekly than entire German provinces managed monthly. The processing facilities employed technologies German industry had never developed, even in peacetime. Maria calculated portions with the precision of someone who had lived by rationing mathematics. Each meal represented resources that could sustain a German communications battalion for a week. The butter alone equaled what entire Hamburg districts might receive through black market channels. The fresh vegetables, arriving daily by refrigerated truck, demonstrated agricultural abundance that contradicted every assumption about American capacity. Bread service revealed American wheat production through varieties showcasing different agricultural techniques. White bread prepared from refined flour contrasted with whole grain options retaining nutritional elements. Sweet rolls incorporated sugar and eggs that would have been impossible to obtain in Germany. The casual availability of multiple bread types revealed agricultural surplus exceeding German production even in peacetime years. Dairy products appeared in forms challenging German understanding of food processing technology. Pasteurized milk maintained freshness through refrigeration systems German facilities could never sustain. Cheese varieties demonstrated preservation techniques, extending shelf life while maintaining nutritional value. Butter appeared fresh daily, requiring dairy production exceeding what entire German districts could manage. The waste disposal revealed perhaps the most shocking aspect of American abundance. Entire portions of barely touched food disappeared into garbage bins without concern. Bread rolls with single bites missing, meat cut but not finished, vegetables left untouched because prisoners' stomachs, conditioned by years of inadequate nutrition, could not process such rich fare. Anna Richter, observing kitchen operations, documented daily food requirements sustaining this single camp. 2,000 pounds of meat delivered weekly, 500 gallons of milk consumed daily, fresh produce arriving by railroad car from farms operating without fear of bombing or requisition. The supply chain stretched across an entire continent, coordinating production from dozens of states to ensure enemy prisoners receive better nutrition than German civilians. Letter writing became Maria's most torturous daily ritual. Seated at a wooden table in the recreation hall, she stared at blank paper while struggling to compose words that would not reveal her shameful abundance to her sister Anna in Hamburg. The censors allowed personal correspondence, but how could she describe eating fresh fruit daily while German children fought over apple cores and bomb craters? Her first attempt read simply, "I am well and adequately fed." She crossed out adequately, then well, then the entire sentence. How could she explain that breakfast alone contained more calories than Anna might receive in 2 days? That American prisoners ate butter by the spoonful while German civilians had forgotten its taste entirely. Greta Zimmerman faced similar struggles, crafting careful phrases to her mother in Berlin. The Americans follow international law regarding prisoner treatment. True, but inadequate to describe the psychological warfare of generosity. How could she convey that enemy captors provided medical care superior to what German hospitals offer their own citizens? The censorship office, managed by Lieutenant Robert Hayes from Kansas, operated with efficiency that impressed even suspicious German observers. Letters were reviewed quickly, personal content preserved while military information was redacted with surgical precision. The Americans demonstrated administrative competence that exceeded German bureaucratic standards, even for enemy correspondence. Maria's final draft mentioned regular meals and adequate shelter, carefully avoiding specifics about portion sizes or menu variety. She could not write that dinner featured grilled steak and fresh vegetables, while her sister probably queued for hours for watery soup and sawdust bread. The contrast was unbearable, yet undeniable. Anna Richter, helping other prisoners compose letters, observed the universal struggle with shame disguised as discretion. Women who had served the Reich faithfully now found themselves better fed as prisoners and their families were as free citizens. Each carefully worded sentence carried the weight of betrayal, both of ideology and loved ones. Some prisoners refused to write at all, unable to reconcile communication with families starving in bombed cities while they consumed American abundance. Others wrote fiction, describing harsh conditions they wished were true to maintain consistency with Nazi propaganda about enemy brutality. The mail system itself revealed American organizational capacity. Letters traveled from Camp Liberty to Hamburg via established postal networks operating efficiently despite global warfare. German postal services had collapsed under bombing and resource shortages, yet American mail reached enemy families with clockwork precision. The psychological transformation accelerated through daily repetition of experiences that challenged fundamental assumptions about American society. Each meal delivered evidence contradicting Nazi propaganda about democratic weakness and racial incompetence. The abundance was not stage propaganda designed to impress prisoners, but routine operation of systems functioning at this level consistently across the American heartland. Captain Michael Torres, the camp commander from New Mexico, demonstrated administrative competence during weekly inspections that impressed even critical German observers. His casual authority, professional demeanor, and systematic approach to prisoner welfare revealed military leadership principles that exceeded Wehrmacht standards. Most disturbing to Nazi ideology, his Hispanic heritage contradicted theories about racial hierarchy, while his obvious competence challenged assumptions about American military quality. American guards confirmed this reality through casual conversations revealing their own expectations about food quality. Sergeant James Mitchell from Iowa complained that breakfast eggs were slightly overcooked, criticism that would have been incomprehensible to people who considered any eggs a luxury. Private David Chun from California expressed preferences between different menu options, indicating regular variation in food preparation that treated prisoner meals as worthy of culinary consideration. The guards' attitudes toward waste particularly shocked German observers who had learned to preserve every scrap of edible material. Americans discarded food, showing slight imperfection, threw away portions remaining uneaten, and treated abundance with carelessness of people who had never experienced genuine scarcity, revealing resource security German society had never achieved even before the war. Maria found herself calculating the economic requirements sustaining such casual generosity. Each meal represented resources that could feed a German field hospital for days. The electricity consumed for refrigeration exceeded monthly allocations for entire German towns. The fuel burned transporting fresh produce daily would have supplied Wehrmacht units for weeks. Quality control measures impressed German observers through standards treating prisoner meals as worthy of professional attention. Temperature monitoring ensured optimal serving conditions. Appearance standards rejected items with minor cosmetic flaws. Taste testing verified flavor consistency across large batches. These procedures demonstrated commitment to excellence, contradicting German expectations about prisoner treatment. Anna Richter, documenting American efficiency in her hidden diary, noted organizational methods exceeding German military administration in comparable situations. Training programs ensured consistent food preparation across multiple shifts. Supervision structures prevented errors while maintaining production schedules. Management sophistication revealed systematic competence rather than improvised responses to wartime demands. The daily experience systematically demolished every assumption about relative national strength, democratic efficiency, and inevitable triumph of Nazi ideology. The medical transformations provided undeniable physical evidence of American resources versus German deprivation. Maria's monthly weigh-in with nurse Catherine Sullivan from Boston revealed steady gains that contradicted years of wartime malnutrition. 2 pounds weekly during the first month of captivity, her hollowed cheeks filling out, her energy returning with each properly balanced meal. Scurvy symptoms that had plagued German military personnel for months disappeared within days of vitamin C consumption through fresh citrus shipped from Florida groves. Night blindness, endemic among Wehrmacht communications specialists working by candlelight, resolved as vitamin A deficiency was corrected through dairy products and yellow vegetables unavailable in Germany for years. Anna Richter, working in the camp infirmary, documented recovery rates that challenged her medical training. Patients who had arrived with bleeding gums, protein edema, and signs of systematic starvation now showed robust health markers within weeks. American nutritional protocols prevented refeeding syndrome while gradually restoring normal metabolic function. The medical supplies themselves revealed industrial capacity beyond German comprehension. Sulfa drugs available without restriction, morphine for pain management, vitamins produced in quantities exceeding German pharmaceutical output. Dr. Elizabeth Chun from San Francisco, the chief medical officer, administered treatments using medicines German field hospitals had never possessed even in peacetime. Physical examinations revealed the extent of nutritional collapse among German military personnel. Average weight was 25 pounds below normal. Chronic fatigue, weakened immune systems, and dental problems reflected systematic dietary inadequacy over years of war. Yet American medical staff treated these conditions without judgment, providing comprehensive care that exceeded what German civilians received from their own healthcare system. Greta Zimmermann, assisting with medical records, calculated caloric intakes that defied German understanding of resource allocation. 3,000 calories daily, balanced nutrition including proteins, vitamins, and minerals that had vanished from German diets when import routes were severed. Each meal provided nutritional density equivalent to what German families might receive weekly through rationing systems. The transformation was psychological as well as physical. Women who had arrived exhausted, suspicious, and defeated now walked with renewed energy. Their skin regained color. Their hair showed renewed vitality. Their eyes lost the hollow desperation that had marked months of survival in a collapsing Reich. Laboratory tests conducted by American medical personnel documented improvement in blood chemistry, organ function, and immune response that provided scientific evidence of recovery impossible under German wartime conditions. The systematic restoration of health through adequate nutrition became another weapon in the psychological warfare of abundance. The educational sessions began with English lessons that twisted clumsily in German mouths. Sergeant Patricia Coleman from Nebraska exaggerated her pronunciation, her voice almost playful, coaxing them to repeat basic phrases. "Good morning. How are you? My name is." Some muttered the words with clenched jaws. Others giggled at their own mistakes. Maria kept her face stern, but when she whispered the words, they felt lighter than the guttural weight of her own language. Then came the films that shattered remaining illusions. One afternoon, prisoners were assembled in the mess hall where a projector rattled to life. The screen flickered with images that defied denial. Ruined cities, corpses in striped uniforms, emaciated figures stumbling through liberation gates. The women stared in silence, faces pale, breaths shallow. Some whispered denials, others turned away, but the camera did not flinch. Maria felt her stomach knot as the documentary unspooled before them, grainy but undeniable. She had believed, or had wanted to believe, that such stories were Allied propaganda, exaggerated for psychological warfare. Yet here was photographic evidence that challenged everything the Reich had taught about superior German civilization. The Americans did not shout accusations or force confessions. They simply let the images linger in troubled minds. Then they returned to English lessons, to their books, as if to say the world you believed in has ended. Now learn the language of another reality. Some women retreated further into silence after the films, clinging desperately to ideological fragments. Others leaned forward, hungry not only for food, but for knowledge. Libraries appeared with novels, histories, and poetry that had been banned in Germany. Maria discovered a battered copy of works by authors the Reich had declared degenerate, yet their words carried her beyond the barbed wire of captivity. Reading became rebellion, each page contradicting years of intellectual control. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez from New Mexico distributed newspapers featuring American perspectives on global events. These publications revealed democratic processes, open debate, and criticism of government policies that would have been treasonous in Germany. The concept of loyal opposition, of citizens questioning authority without fear of death, challenged fundamental assumptions about governance. Educational programs offered technical training, language instruction, and cultural orientation designed to prepare prisoners for eventual repatriation. But the deeper curriculum was ideological transformation through exposure to concepts the Nazi system had systematically suppressed. Freedom of thought, individual dignity, and democratic participation became dangerous ideas, taking root in fertile minds freed from totalitarian control. The classroom became a battlefield where American values confronted German indoctrination through patient instruction rather than violent conquest. The announcement of repatriation arrived on a crisp October morning, carried by Captain Michael Torres with administrative efficiency that had become familiar yet still impressive. Processing would begin within weeks, transporting German prisoners back to a homeland that existed more in memory than reality. Maria stared at the official documentation, her emotions a confused mixture of relief, dread, and unexpected loss. Preparation rituals began immediately. Medical examinations documented recovery that provided stark evidence of American abundance versus German deprivation. Weight gains averaging 25 pounds, restored vitamin levels, eliminated deficiency diseases. The physical transformation would serve as living testimony to enemy generosity, though explaining such health improvements to starving families would require careful navigation. Final meals carried symbolic weight, far exceeding their nutritional content. Fresh bread still warm from ovens, butter spreading like golden luxury across surfaces, vegetables retaining colors that had vanished from German memory. Each bite reinforced the same devastating message. Enemies had fed them better than their own government had managed, even in peacetime prosperity. Personal belongings were returned with American thoroughness. Items confiscated during capture arrived clean, cataloged, and preserved with care that exceeded German military efficiency. Maria received her communications equipment, notebooks, and personal effects in better condition than when surrendered months earlier. Greta Zimmerman struggled with conflicted loyalties as she prepared to leave the camp infirmary. Working alongside American medical staff had revealed professional standards that exceeded German healthcare, access to medicines that German hospitals never possessed, and treatment protocols that prioritize patient welfare over ideological considerations. Returning to bombed medical facilities would require psychological adjustment more difficult than initial captivity. Anna Richter documented final observations in her hidden diary, attempting to capture experiences that contradicted years of Nazi indoctrination. The systematic kindness, casual abundance, and professional competence that had demolished every assumption about American weakness. Her writings would become contraband more dangerous than weapons when smuggled back to occupied Germany. Transportation arrangements revealed American logistical capabilities that impressed even skeptical German observers. Trains scheduled with precision, medical support provided throughout the journey, supplies coordinated across continental distances. The repatriation process operated with mechanical efficiency that contrasted sharply with German administrative chaos. The final night brought quiet conversations among women whose worldviews had been fundamentally altered through months of unexpected generosity. Some clung desperately to ideological fragments, insisting American treatment was temporary manipulation. Others whispered dangerous questions about systems capable of such sustained abundance while simultaneously fighting global warfare. Maria lay awake staring at camp lighting that had provided security rather than surveillance, wondering how she would explain her transformation to family members who had suffered while she prospered in enemy hands. The train that carried them back toward Germany rattled across landscapes scarred with silence. Maria pressed her face against grimy windows, watching villages flatten to rubble, bridges twisted over rivers like broken bones. The women who had once feared American brutality now faced the reality that their captors had treated them better than their own bombed-out cities ever could. Hamburg appeared through industrial haze as a skeleton of its former self. Where Maria's family home had stood, only scattered bricks remained among weeds. A neighbor, limping and gray-haired, delivered news with brutal efficiency. Her sister Anna had died during the final bombing raids, crushed beneath debris while queuing for bread rations that never arrived. The words landed without ceremony, yet hollowed Maria's chest like artillery strikes. She stood amid ruins, clutching the small bundle of possessions returned by American efficiency, the scent of fresh bread from memory rising cruelly in her nostrils. To have been fed so well while her sister starved, was that survival or betrayal of everything that mattered? Distant relatives eyed her with suspicion mixed with envy. They had suffered hunger, cold, and bombardment while she had been a prisoner. Yet her cheeks carried color. Her frame showed substance that theirs lacked. Sharp questions followed about what she had given the Americans in return for such obvious health. Her silence only deepened their mistrust. On Hamburg's shattered streets, children stared with resentful eyes, their bellies swollen with malnutrition, their faces gaunt with need. Maria avoided their gazes, each glance carrying accusations she could not answer. How could she explain that prison camp meals had exceeded what these children might receive in weeks of civilian rationing? Guilt shadowed every memory of American abundance. The taste of butter became shameful luxury. Fresh vegetables transformed into symbols of betrayal. Most painful was the knowledge that enemy generosity had been genuine rather than calculated, revealing systems capable of sustained kindness, while her own people suffered under ideological promises that delivered only destruction. Yet something deeper had changed during those months behind Texas Wire. The systematic demolition of Nazi propaganda through daily kindness had planted seeds that could not be uprooted by returning hardship. Maria carried knowledge that democracy could function, that enemies could show mercy, that abundance was possible without conquest or racial superiority. In quiet moments among Hamburg's ruins, she whispered her sister's name while remembering the taste of fresh bread. Two truths existed simultaneously: grief for Anna's suffering and gratitude for survival through enemy mercy. The contradiction would define her remaining years, carrying both loss and unwanted wisdom that captivity had been more humane than freedom. The scent of bread, when occasionally available, would forever trigger memories of Camp Liberty, where enemies had demonstrated humanity their own system had abandoned.